Hi, and welcome to your new UnitusTI account. This tutorial will give you a quick overview on getting started, setting up your user access, adding clients, assigning them to each other, and give you a few tips about administering your account along the way. When you first log in, you arrive on the home page, which will display today's events, which you can set up in the calendar, and a running banner of features and highlights, updates, and things that we like to bring to the attention of our users. On the left side of the screen, you'll find the main menu. This is hidden under a hamburger icon here when your browser is smaller or you're on a smaller device. And I'll show you how you can add labels to this so you can view it better if you wish. The top bar has the help icon here, which allows you to search for help articles and videos. Go directly to the help center if you wish. Request support, which opens up an email form where you can tell the support team about your issue, ask a question, or even ask them to add new features to the accounts. Next to that is your company logo, which we added for you when we released your account, and you can change or update later in the center information area. Next to that is the user's icon who's logged in. If there's a picture in their user profile, which you can add as an administrator, they'll see that, or it'll be their initials here. Here you can find my account. So as a user, you can see some account preferences. You can log out from here, and you can use an optional feature if you want called clock in, which allows users to clock in and out manually, creating a report for administrators to see when people were working. Clicking My Account allows the user to see the profile that you set up for them. You're going to be seeing your configuration account that we set up for you. But when you create user accounts, the information that you put in will be displayed here for them. They can also change some of their account settings in this tab here. For example, adding a personal Zoom account if they want to add links in their calendar events to Zoom meetings. They can change their password from here or on the main login screen from the Forgot Password feature. They can also change their language setting for the platform from English to Spanish. That just affects them as a user, but as an administrator, you have a place to do that globally if you prefer. And last but not least, the menu mode has a way to change icons with label. Clicking that added labels to my menu options here so I can see exactly where I need to go. Clicking this little button at the top takes me right back to the main screen anytime. The last icon here at the top is a little feature called the program list selector. It's populated once you start running programs or add programs to this list so that you can jump through them. That's a whole other set of training videos, including how to assign programs to clients and how to create programs. But here you can see that when I've got them in this list, it's really handy for me to jump between clients and jump to the program list I want to work on with them at that moment. One of the first things you'll probably want to do is set up your account with user access for other users. If you don't have any other users at this time and don't plan on having your parents or caregivers or outside people log in for any particular reason, you can skip this step and go to the next one. For those of you who want to create user access or would like to change your user access from the configuration account we provided to you on sign up, then go to Center in the main menu and click on User List. For you, this list will be blank except for the one user account that you're logged in as. And as you add new users, they will appear in this list. Once you are ready for a user no longer to have access, the Actions button will allow you to remove them. Removing an account is a permanent action and their profile cannot be recreated. User IDs are permanent once you assign them. This is the username that the user will log in with on the login screen. So in the event that you do need to change that or you need to grant access to someone who you removed at some point in the past, simply create a new user account for them with a different user ID. All of the data that any user takes with a client when they're running programs or assessments or other content, that resides with the client record, so there's no danger of losing that just by removing and adding a user again. When you're ready to add a new user, or if you want to create a different login for yourself, click the red button and a form will appear that you can fill out. Please note that in a browser, if your browser settings are to autofill, you may find that some of these fields, especially the user ID and the password, are pre-filled. Be sure to remove that information so that you can enter correct information before you save this. The first required piece of information in the new account for a user is to choose a user ID, and this is going to be their username that they log in with, and it's also going to show up in reports. So a couple of things to keep in mind when you're creating user IDs. One is that, as I mentioned before, you cannot reuse them after you have removed the user. You also can't change them after you save this profile for the first time. And they're pulled from a global repository, which just means that if you try to use a name that some other user in another UnitusTI account already has, you'll get an error message when you try to save this record that says it's already in use. So keeping that in mind, you might want to get creative with your user IDs. You can use letters, you can use numbers, and a couple of special characters, for example, a period, an underscore. Play around with it, see what you can do, and get creative. I've used all those options by adding numbers and letters and periods. I can change that, let's see, to an underscore. And you just do whatever's right for you. Once you're done with that, fill in the rest of the required information. We'll fill out just the required fields, which are denoted by an asterisk, but you have a lot of other information you can include in a user profile if you want to keep it there. So we'll jump down to the email address, which is another required field. It's important to know that email is not something you log in using. So if your users come to you and say they can't get in, just make sure that they are using their user ID, which is called the username on the login screen, and not their email. The email is important for if they try to change their password using forgot password, which is a feature on the login screen. This email address is what the reset password email will be sent to. The third party checkbox is not required, but people like to know what that is. So I will tell you it is just a little check to say, to denote that this profile is not somebody necessarily who's a staff member of your account. Maybe they're a parent, maybe they're an outside therapist that is not part of your actual team, but you can use this if you wish just to denote that. The password field is pretty robust. We are compliant with HIPAA and GDPR, and these compliance certifications make it mandatory to have very robust passwords. So when you choose a password, it will prompt you along the way with the requirements, which include 6 characters or more. You'll also have to have at least one of those characters as a lowercase letter, at least one as an uppercase letter, at least one number, and at least one special character, which is something like an exclamation point or percentage sign or anything like that. The next step is to choose a security role for your user, which is a critical piece in the security options for protecting your account. The security roles are listed here and have specific permissions about what is accessible in the system. Administrator can access everything, although there are a couple of roles called auditor and reviewer, which don't appear in this list until you have enabled the session notes template auditing feature. It's something that you might want to do so that as an auditor or reviewer, you can reject or accept session notes that your users create, and rejecting them will kick them back over to them and with a little note to say what they need to fix. So if you do enable that feature in center information, which we'll check out later, you can see that that role will be available now. To choose a role, we have a separate document that is in our help center to help you with that. It's pretty big, so we can't include that information here. We've included that information in your center information in the center documents area, or you can go to the help options here, type in security roles, and the security roles guide will be available. Clicking this button will take you to the help center with that to view that help article. And in that help article, there's an option to download the roles guide. I recommend that because it downloads it as an Excel file, which is a lot easier to read. And the document we put in your center information, center documents area is also the Excel guide you can download right away. Once you've looked at that and you've reviewed the permissions that these roles have, you can make your selection here by either clicking and dragging the role over or checking the box and using the arrows, same to remove them. And you can revisit this area and change these as many times as you want. So you can always be updating the access that any particular user has at any time. The rest of the tabs here and the fields here are not required, but they do contain places where you can store information that you'd like to keep handy. Once we save this record for the first time, other tabs will open. So let's do that by clicking the Store Account Data button. This gives us a confirmation message that tells us they were successfully created, but that the new user is not emailed. So as the administrator, it is your job to share their login information, including their username and password, and of course, the URL to log in, and the 5-digit account number, which is the same number you use to log in. All users use that as their UnitusTI ID number as part of the login information. So go ahead and click OK when you're ready to move along. Also know that you can add a picture in a user profile up here, this little icon with a camera. If you click it, will let you choose a document from your available files on your system, and doing that will allow the user to see themselves up here instead of their initials. So that's kind of fun, but it is optional. Down below in the tabs, you'll notice some other tabs were created, including the Clients Assigned tab, which is where you can assign clients to this user. And there's another place to do that as well, so you don't have to drill down into this area. But when you do use it from this area, you click the red button, which opens up a list of all the clients that you've created. If you haven't created any yet, you will see only one here, which is the training pato. The training pato is assigned to your configuration account when we release your account, and the training pato is free. You are not billed for this client, so we recommend keeping them. If you do accidentally remove them for some reason, contact our support team because they'll need to recreate this client in your account to make sure that you're not charged for them. So use the training pato yourself, assign it to as many staff members as you want. Essentially, this is the safest way for you to test out the system because if you do test out the system with other real clients, you cannot delete a lot of the information that is assigned to them. So be very careful, use the training pato. And from this screen, you can select this button to select everyone on the page, make sure there aren't any other pages, or just select the clients that somebody should be assigned to and choose store selection. After that, going back down to that tab, clients assigned, we can see that those clients were assigned and repeat that process to assign more clients or unassign these clients as we wish. The other tab here next to that is user documents, where you can upload documents related to this user. The only people these are visible to are any administrator because they can access this user list. And there's a security role called user manager that allows a user to get into this area as well. The other person who can see this will be the user themselves. Up here in my account, which we visited earlier, the user documents tab is visible and the document list is visible. However, they cannot access those documents. Feel free to explore the other tabs as you're creating users and see what other information you can enter. But that's the basics for adding a user to the account. So let's go back to the user list. I can jump back there using the back button or use the breadcrumbs up here to go back to the user list. And when I'm there, I will see all the users I've added so far, some basic information. I can use these boxes at the top to find somebody quickly. And on the right-hand side, I can see a bunch of icons here, which are nice and green, which means that this account is not locked out. If you, as an administrator, get a request from one of your users to help them get into the account, you can come here and see if they're locked out. The lockout happens after entering a password 5 times incorrectly or more. Unfortunately, because of compliance certification, the messaging you get on the login screen, and this is important for you to know for your users, they don't tell you exactly what piece of information was incorrect. They don't tell you if you're locked out, but if a person just can't get in, try to steer your users to use the forgot password feature, which allows them to reset their password themselves. Failing that, they can come to you and you can go into this button here under Actions and reset their password for them. Quickly reset their password and then tell them what it is. They will not be notified. If a user comes to our support team, that's one of the things that our team isn't allowed to do. They're not allowed to grant or reset access for users. That is entirely up to the administrators of the account. So they may direct them back to you as the administrator. So just know that that's one of the things that you'll do to manage your account. Also under the Actions button, you can see there's some other options. Updating account, of course, is just to go back to the profile and add or change information. Reset password is to reset the password for the user. Assign clients is the place you can go, which we did inside the profile, but you can do from here much more quickly, assigning clients in that same screen we were in before, or removing clients. And the last option is the remove account button, which, as I mentioned before, permanently removes this user profile. If you want to get it back, you just have to create a new one, and you will have to choose a different user ID. Okay, that's the basics of creating users and assigning them to clients. But now you're going to need to actually create clients so that you have something to assign users to and somebody to work with. So we'll do that next. To assign clients, go to Center in this main menu, click on My Clients, which is an area that you will use to create clients using the red button and where you as a user who is assigned to these clients can see them here. One of the key features of this area, the key things to note, is that if you come into this screen and don't see a client, it's likely because you are not assigned to them or because they really weren't created in your system. But the easy way to find out if that's the case is actually back in the user list. So this is something an administrator will probably have to perform. going to the Assigned Clients area and just seeing if that client was assigned to that user. Find the user in this list, go to Assigned Clients, and check if they were not assigned to that and go ahead and assign them to that client. So a user might come to you as an administrator to help sort out why they can't see their clients in the My Clients list, or if their security role doesn't let them into this area, why they can't see them in the Run Program or Run Assessment area or other places you're running content for clients. Note that the programs and assessment areas are areas where you will be creating and assigning content. Those are covered under different tutorials. But if you go to Run Program and don't see anything there just yet, that's because you probably need to go to Manage Programs or Manage Assessment to assign the content there. Okay, to create clients to do that for, click on the red button in this My Clients area, which opens up a form a lot like the user form we just saw. You can also add a picture to your client using the same kind of icon we saw in the user profile here. And you can start filling out the information. We will just, in this training, cover the most basic required information, but do know that there's lots of other stuff you can add. For example, the client ID field is not required, but that's used very often for people with maybe client numbering systems. Schools often have school numbers they like to put in there, or if you have an alias you want to put in here. But again, this is an optional field. We will just fill out the required field. Date of birth, if you don't know it or want to come back and do that later, it is required. So just fill something in. The system won't care. Same with home phone and a couple of the other fields. I can just put the number 1 right now just to put something in there. And the next required field is the gender. This actually is important because your reports need to show what pronoun you choose. So choosing male will have he or him pronouns. Female will be she, her. Or you can choose custom, selecting male or female pronouns, or neutral to say they, them. And after doing that, optionally put in a gender label if you want to make sure to denote that, for example, let's say this client is transgender female, or the designation that they identify with, you can put there. And choosing female will still keep the pronouns in the report the way they should be, but you can optionally label that as well. You don't have to, but it is there if you need it. Home address is required, so we'll just enter another quick piece of information and come back to this later if we want to. That's it for the required fields, but do note that there's lots of other information you can put here and other tabs with more information you can add, which we'll go into in a few minutes after we save this client. Because just like the user profile, once you save, by clicking the Save button, more tabs will open. Very important when you're clicking Save is that the little warning message here tells you that a new client profile may not be visible in the My Clients list till it's been assigned to those users who need access. And this includes the user who creates the client. So whether you're creating clients or you assign this task to someone else, be sure that they do assign them to you if you want them to be visible to you and any other user that's necessary. Again, as an administrator, you can always reassign yourself to anybody you need to from the user list. Clicking Save will actually give the option of the person creating this client record to add themselves as a team member, which they can cancel if they don't want to be assigned or say confirm yes. Now, a tab here called Team Members will show what users this client is assigned to. For example, this client has been assigned this user, and other users can be assigned by clicking this red button, and can be unassigned by unchecking. So let's assign this new client to everybody. Click Store. Oh, and again, making sure that you have clicked everybody on other pages as well. As you add lots of clients and lots of users, only a certain amount show up on these screens. You can change that by selecting a higher number or making sure to go page by page. Click Store Selection when you're ready, and now you can see all the team members that have been assigned to that client. When you start creating custom forms from the tool set that allows you to create custom forms, you'll see that these tabs are in the user area and in the client area and in the center area as well, so that you can use form templates for those clients or users or the whole center that you've created. And but we won't get into the other tabs here. There are lots of trainings that go more into detail on this. I just want to get you quickly set up, so let's move on to the next task. We've saved this client, so let's go back to the list to see them there. And from this list, you can do other actions, some of which are also available from other screens, but let's go through what you can do here from the clients list. The little magnifying glass just lets you see a quick preview, but it doesn't let you edit. The reason why that is there is because some security roles allow a user into this area to view information for the clients that they are assigned to. Remember, they will only be able to see who they're assigned to in this list, but they shouldn't be able to edit. So they don't, for example, have access to this button, which is the update button. The update button takes you back into the profile so that you can make changes. And again, only if your security role allows you. This icon here that looks like a little book is also found on the Run Program screen, and it is to create session notes. And we have a separate training on how to create a session note for a client. The last icon here in this profile area is the check-in, checkout button. Notice that when it's green, it's because somebody has already checked in this client, and when it's red, it's because they have not yet been checked in. The last option here is a button that lets you check in or check out your clients. This is an optional step, but allows you to create records of when, for example, they have arrived at your center or location, or when you've arrived at theirs, and when you've left. There are other ways to track time with clients, including client calendar events or using service codes in your session notes. This is just one of the quick ways to do it. So if you do want to check in or out your client, you just click the button, select a time from this area, which is preset and defaults to the time you're currently in. You can add a location. Let's say the client arrived at the center, an observation note. Maybe you want to say they came in feeling a certain way. It's up to you. This information will show up in the report. If the client has a contact person in their record that you'll see a list of optional contacts you can add to say this is the person who brought them in. Click Save when you're done. And this information is going to show up in the Reports and Tracking area under Client Attendance. The Client Attendance report has dates at the top to make sure you capture all of the dates that you wish for the period. And I can edit the record from here or delete it. You can see that this client was just checked in but not checked out yet, so that can be done from that checkout icon, which is available in My Clients but is also available in other places like Run Program. A green icon means they've already been checked in and now they need to be checked out. So let me click that and choose a time after this check-in time. And I'll want to note that someone else picked them up. Some people use this report to simply create a quick report about security to say who brought them in and who you handed them off to, for example. Click Save, and now my record's updated, and that icon is now back to red. Again, this icon is available from the Run Program screen so that your therapist can use this report to quickly in and out a client, which creates a time-based report, very simple time-based report about when they're meeting with them. The only limitations here are that there can't be duplicate records. So if somebody is checking them in and out, they can't have overlapping times. You will get errors if that occurs. Okay, so that's the basics of creating a client record, assigning it to a user so that that user can see it, and a report for this area. This little export button at the top right corner allows you to print an Excel report of all of your clients in this list. Again, this is only for the clients in the My Clients list that you are looking at. So if you're not assigned to any clients, they won't show up here. And again, you'll want to go back to the user list, click on the Actions button for your profile, and select Assign Clients to assign them to yourself. Now you've got clients and users in your account to do further tasks with. In future trainings, you're going to learn how to create programs or use the ones you've subscribed to. Program templates area will let you create programs, view the ones you're subscribed to. Manage programs will let you assign programs to your clients by creating program lists. And run program is the area that therapists can go into to run the program and take data. And the reports and tracking area has 4 different program related reports here that you can use to graph and report on the information you take here. The assessment area allows you to create assessments in your assessment list, manage them by assigning them to clients, and run them. And the dashboard here has some reports that allow you to see assessment results and engagement statistics as well. You'll also notice a Session Notes dashboard report and a Virtual Materials dashboard report. Session Notes dashboard report is done after you take session notes and also manages your service code balances, unit balances, if you've set those up. Virtual Materials dashboard is a reporting area for the Virtual Materials toolset, which is found here in the toolsets area. Virtual Materials lets you create flashcards, interactive flashcard activities that can take data as well. Custom Forms is where you can create form templates with your own questions and sections and utilize those forms for clients, users, or your center. Now let's take a look at what you can do to set up your center with certain preferences and see what the center information area has. So back in the center menu area, click on Center Information. This area contains the information you signed up with, but a lot of these are editable fields, so you can feel free to go through and update the information as you need to. And this information can be visible in reports if you set it during the report creation. Your UnitusTI ID number is your account number. Same 5 digits are used for all of your users when logging in, and this cannot be changed. Down below, you'll notice an area where you can edit the logo image that appears here on your screen, and this logo can also appear in reports if you just designate it. Clicking Edit Image will let you choose a file from your system. You'll also notice a Center Documents tab here. We've uploaded into your account certain help documents that we think are handy to keep right here, including that security roles document I mentioned earlier. This is the roles guide in an Excel spreadsheet where you can see the roles that are available for your users and what permissions they contain. You might want to download this and keep that handy as you're creating your users. You can upload your own documents here by clicking the red button, which will allow you to choose a document from your device that you're on. And this way you can share documents easily with all your users in your account. So this is not an area you'd want to use for private information, such as specific client documents or user documents, but it is a great place to put general documents that all users should have access to. One of the things you can do in this area is change some preferences for your account. In account setup, you have a place to put your Zoom account, if you have a Zoom account that all your users can also access. In the My Profile, in the My Account area, your users can individually add a Zoom account if they prefer of their own. The Session Notes Setup area allows you to create a template for your session notes. Clicking this will show you all of the available fields that are optional fields that users can add into their notes. It doesn't reflect the notes primary fields, which are always there, including the note itself. But these fields are something that is a list that's available when creating a session note. Any user can add a field. So let's say you want to make sure that they always add client location, which is a field that they can write in the address or some other note. And you always want them to choose from the list of available locations like home, center, etc. Anything you want them to always fill in or at least have present so that they're mindful of that field, just click that here, and that will now show up in the session note. If you also want to further make it required, be sure to click this. And this affects all session notes. So all users will now see these requirements when they're creating their session note. The other option here is you can toggle on the audit mode. Now, when your account's released, this is by default off, but selecting the audit mode will allow certain users that you designate with security roles as auditor or reviewer to review and reject or accept session notes in the session notes template, in the session notes dashboard here. So again, toggle that on if you wish, and then go over to the user profiles who should be doing the auditing or reviewing and assign those roles to them, the auditor role and or the reviewer role. Another thing you can change is the color scheme for your account. This will change it for everybody. So instead of blue, you could choose green or another color. Language you can change to Spanish for the entire platform. Again, individual users can also do that in their My Account area. And the rest of this information just tells you what you are subscribed to. Please note that the programs library just refers to program templates subscriptions that you have. You may not see listed here anything that you subscribe to that is assessment based only. Some of our authors create really great learning content that is actually created in the assessment area because the assessment area is extremely versatile. It allows you to create evaluations or learning content with questions to answer and scoring, etc. Let's take a look at the My Workspace area next, which has some administrative functionality that you should be aware of, things to know about what your users can do. First thing in My Workspace is the My Documents area, which is another document storage area in UnitusTI. This one in particular is extremely private. The only person who can access this is the user. Logged in, they come to this area and they can see a default folder where they can add documents to it using this red button. They can also create new folders. So if they'd like to personalize this area, they can create a folder, find that folder under the main path here, and add documents to it specifically by clicking this Upload New File button. This is a great way to organize documents that you don't necessarily want to share with anybody yet, but you may want to share in future. If you want to share them in future with specific other users, you can actually do that in the next place in My Workspace called Internal Communication. This is an internal messaging area just for users in your UnitusTI account. It will not email outside of the system, and users need to share a client to be able to send a message to each other. They need to have at least one client in common. So sending a message is very simple. You click on the red button, choose the user or users you want to send the message to, and then the Shared Docs option lets you select documents specifically from the My Documents area to share. The reason why it doesn't share with other documents stored in other places is because those places are inherently visible to the people who need to see them. For example, in your client profile, client documents that are stored there are visible to users who are assigned to that client and who have the right permission security role to let them into that area. Same with the user profile. And in center documents, they're public documents. You don't need to specifically go through the trouble of sending a message and sharing them. So this functionality gives you just another way to share documents if you want to. The last place in My Workspace is the calendar, which you may wish to use to create sessions, upcoming sessions, keep track of upcoming sessions with clients, and also mark sessions complete or not, which also feeds into a report, which is very useful. Let's take a quick look at how to set up a client-based event that will feed into that report that I just mentioned. Now note that we have a lovely help video already in our help center about how to use the calendar, so I encourage you to use that if you want to get into more detail. But just let's look at this from a quick administrator point of view. The first thing to note as an administrator is that you're able to see calendars from other users in your system. So you can click on this list and actually go to a user here and just see what's on their calendar. This filter available to everybody allows you to filter events for a specific client that you are accessing just for your events and just if an event has that client associated with it. You can create an event by clicking the red button. And then the first thing you do is choose the visibility. For the report that I'm going to show you where you can track time spent based on these reports, you don't want to choose center wide. You want to choose one of these others. Only Me means it's just on your calendar. Share means you can choose other users to include in the event. If I don't want to do that, but I want to get out of here, I'm just going to click select. And then create as allows you to create an event for someone else. So it won't show up on your calendar. But again, back in the filter on the main calendar screen, as I showed you before, you can see other people's calendars. So you could always go and see what they're doing for the day. So let's create an only me visibility for this event. And I'm choosing this first because if I change it, everything I do down here will change. So I like to make sure that's set correctly at the beginning. Choosing a start and end date by clicking on the little calendar icon. Let's go ahead and make that for now and make it for an hour from let's see. Oh, let's change that to PM and make that 3. So now we have an event starting at that time, ending at that time. Let me click select. And then if I have a Zoom account set up, either because I put it in my account area because it's my personal Zoom account, or if the center has a Zoom account set up that I'm part of, you as an administrator would do that in that center information area and in the my account in preferences. Then I can enable video conferencing. Of course, I don't have that set up. And if you don't, you'll see this error as well. But that allows you to choose a Zoom link to put into your event. Repeating the event can be switched on with the toggle switch. From there, I can choose if I want it daily, weekly, or monthly. I'm going to go ahead and make this a weekly appointment. And it's going to be 3 times during the week. I have to choose an end date, but I can pick something way in the future and then change it later if I want to by clicking on the event in the calendar to decide to delete. And then I can choose at that moment to delete all future events if I want to. All right, the subject line is important, of course, because that's the name of my event. Uh, and for this report, the session tracking report that I'm going to show you, which is essentially a calendar report, you do need to add a service code. You can create service codes from Center in the service codes area. We have another training for that that you can watch to create your service codes. And service codes can be used in two areas. One is in the calendar and the other is in the session notes. So when you add a service code here, you're just enabling this event to be included in the session tracking report and nowhere else. So you can create a dummy code if you just want something to put in here and not really are tracking units and balances, which again is done with the session notes. Let's go ahead and just use a general one I created for this event. And then if I also want to track time spent with client, I do need to add a client here. So let's add a client to see that option, but it is not necessarily necessary. If this is a user-based event, you're tracking time spent in weekly meetings with your staff, then you just have to pick a service code and you don't have to worry about a client. Description is great because it shows up in reports, but it is optional. Put that in there if you want or leave it blank. You can click Save to save the event. And now I see that that event has been added to my calendar. Clicking on the event gives me some other options. One, I can go in and edit it some more, although you'll notice you cannot edit the visibility after you set that up. If this the case is you need to change it, you'll just need to delete the event and restart. But clicking on here again, I can see the information in general, and I can also see another feature here that you might want to have your users complete. The service completed option will feed into the session tracking report. So clicking yes or no, and you can undo if you didn't want to do that for this event. But clicking this will give you a way to filter in the session tracking report for if service was completed or not. And clicking no gives you some options to select from that give further information if you wish. For example, this client canceled in less than 24 hours, and that's information that I want to report on so that I can make sure I include them in my billing, for example. But I can also choose from the rest of the options in the list, and I can even choose other and type in my own reason down below. Let's go ahead and choose something available here. And that's automatically saved, so all I have to do is close this and it's automatically saved for that particular event. And if you have your users tracking their time spent with clients using the calendar, then that's a very useful feature to give more information about the event. Additionally, you can go in and edit the end time or the start time to correctly reflect the time you met with the client. So let's say they were scheduled for 2:35 to 3, but in fact, they, whoops, in fact, they were late. So let's say they did arrive at 2, um, but they actually came in at 2:50. Changing that and changing any other times you need to really helps you to, let me go correct that, really helps you to accurately reflect the time that you spent with this client. Okay, clicking select will close that, and then saving that will update this event. I just want to update this one event and be really careful about choosing that correctly, just so my report is correct. And now that I've got all the information entered, let's go ahead and check out how that looks in the report. So click on Reports and Tracking and go to Session Tracking. Set the time frame at the very top for, let's say I want to report on an entire month. I set my time frame accurately, and now I can see all the events that I have set up during that time frame. In particular, on this tab for client activity, these events all have been set up with a service code. They have had a client attached to them, and they fall within this date range. And their visibility is not center-wide. So now I can see them in this report. Let's make this smaller so we can get a more measured, a smaller list. So we can see something here, including the total. So now you'll see that for each client, I have a total of hours that was spent with them. I can filter for just one client if I wish. And that way my report only reflects that client, or by default, they'll all be there. I can filter by event member, filter by the service code used, or the name of that code. And I can even filter based on whether service was completed or not. So let's say I just want a report of all the clients that were sick for this time frame. Let's go ahead and make that bigger now. So we'll say service was not completed because the event itself was marked no, and the reason given was client sick. So the available reasons I have in here are going to be they won't show any options that were not actually selected in an event. So here for this time frame, I only had one client that was sick that month. That's great information. I can also add more information to this area by clicking this button here, which actually adds more information on the screen that is not there by default. So I noticed my event description wasn't there, my event subject wasn't there. The description is for the service code. When you set up a service code, you might put a description in it. Well, that's what that will show you. And the last name wasn't showing. Sometimes you like to add that as just a separate column. So figure out what you'd like to see on the screen. Use this selector to filter and add and remove the columns. And when you're ready, if you'd like to export this, use the export button, and you can choose to do that to Excel or to PDF. Other tabs here will allow you to see a variety of information. For example, therapist activity will show me events based on the team member name who was in the event. Um, Sometimes a client is included in those events, sometimes not, but I can also see that it's not necessarily a requirement for that event for me to see this in the report. And again, service completed, yes or no, all of the same filtering that was on the previous tab is available. I can even see calendar events based on the particular code I added. So let's say I don't need a robust service code tracking. I'm not tracking units in a more complex way, which I could do if I was using my service codes into session notes. But separately, I'm tracking my service code usage based on calendar events. I can do that here. Same with this tab. Both of these tabs have a little bit of extra detail that you can access by choosing them. And what's notable here is that service codes can be used separately with session notes or separately with calendar events. They don't report the same way. So if you're using a service code in a calendar event, at this time, that usage is not tracked when you're also using it with session notes. When you use your service codes in session notes, you're going to report on them here in the dashboard using the session notes dashboard. We'll cover that in a separate training. The final thing I want to show you in the setup video is how to quickly see when your users are in the system. So in reports and tracking, there is another administrative report called sign in, sign out records. Clicking on that lets you see for the time frame you set at the top. Let's go ahead and make this a long way in the past. Oops, got to click the date here. Now I can see all of the sign in and sign out records for all my users, whether they logged out themselves or they were kicked out by the system. Um, and I can see when they were in the system. So that just helps me to know who was actually in the system at any given time. And that's it. Please reach out to our support team at any time with questions. And you can use this icon at the top. Remember, request support here to quickly reach out for help. Our team is always ready to jump in and help you via email. So that concludes the basic setup for your account. We've covered adding users so you can grant access to people to the system to run programs and assessments and other content with clients. We've covered adding clients so they can receive those services. Now remember, clients do not log in and users do log in. Users and clients have to be assigned to each other so that services can be performed correctly. And you can use some of the other functions and instruct your users to use them so that as an administrator, you can see all the activity happening in your center. This has been informative. Please reach out to our support team at any time with further questions or for additional training resources.